Key point 1. For an idea to reach its intended target, you must focus on the core message. Often, an idea fails to reach its intended target, or it does, and the meaning is lost on them. This loss of meaning is because there is too much emphasis on the loud excesses, the many things that seem essential on your way to your goal, instead of the core message. Marketers are drawn to making overly complex ads and slogans, alienating their consumers and costing the company money. A lot of this confusion and loss can be avoided if they applied the principle of simplicity. To make a concept simply isn't necessarily the same as watering it down and/or dumbing it down. The authors insist this only means shedding off the unimportant aspects to present the core message to the public. This way, the only information they'll be hearing is exactly what you want them to hear and understand. A good idea is simple, straightforward, and to the point. An idea that will catch the minds and eyes of the public is one based on the inverted pyramid style. This refers to placing the juiciest part of the idea at the forefront and the extra details later. This positioning ensures that people grab the essential parts even though they miss out on the follow-up. The problem then boils down to how we can nurture ideas that'll succeed in the world. Communicating ideas effectively is a challenge with many people, making it difficult for them to get their ideas across and make a difference. A good illustration of this challenge is a chemistry teacher explaining the basics of chemical reactions for an hour, and a week later, just 3 kids in the class recall what the concept is about. Another, a manager gives a presentation which explains the several benefits of a new strategy to be implemented by the organization. The staffers nod their heads enthusiastically, only for the manager to find some of them mechanically implementing the old one on the very next day. You can equally become an effective communicator. Keep going through this piece till you've mopped up the last insight. Key point 2. People barely notice what they are familiar with, and that is precisely why you should do the unexpected. To get your message across effectively, you can employ the use of proverbs and analogies. Proverbs provide the audience with a sense of ethics and cultural reference that eases your message along. In addition, a proverb is concise and compact. It does not drag on about pointless details of its message. While proverbs are compact bites of information, analogies are a doorway to a larger store of information. An analogy is often a reference to another closely related event. It draws meaning and identity from the reference, making it easier for you to grab the message. Ordinarily, a simple message might just mean nothing, even if it was in a proverb form. Still, with an analogy alluding to a separate but similar issue, the core message is suddenly laid bare. Remember, if you wish to get your message across without laboring it with lengthy explanations, a proverb is just what you need. Reworking complex messages into simple bites are very unexpected, and this is precisely why they stick. This affinity for unexpectedness is human nature. We are drawn to newness, novelty, and a break from the norm. The news would be more interesting if the anchor added a comedy spot or had your favorite singer read a section, no? Yes, but then how do you get from average to unexpected when you want to capture people's attention? By doing the unexpected. Take an idea, a concept people are already familiar with, and then throw in a very diverse and unexpected plot twist. The conventional idea would have been monotonous and routine, but you capture and keep their attention once you introduce the surprise factor. Be careful not to douse your message with so much surprise. It's either cliché or pointless. People want to know what they don't already know. The human mind is designed to fill gaps in knowledge. You must first create these gaps and have the correct information to fill them in handy. Your message must be so well framed that the listener waits on the edge of their seat for the next word until it ends. People want to know, so giving them something that sticks long enough is up to you. How can you create these gaps that ready the audience for your unexpected yet simple message? Simply feed them with knowledgeable information, and the information will last a lifetime in their heads. Key point 3. To get and maintain the attention of people, you must make your idea concrete. Ideas can be catchy and draw as much attention as possible when you keep it simple and throw something unexpected that both feeds and draws curiosity from your listeners. However, there is a chance that with so many tools employed, you can risk being abstract and vague. Sometimes we try to get a message across to a particular group, And sadly, the message is either too simple or too unexpectedly surprising that it doesn't hold enough resonance with them. Concreteness is a surefire way to get your message across and avoid bubbling over with needless confusion. What makes a story concrete? What sets apart a concrete story from an abstract one? If your message can draw semblance in something everyone can relate to, then it is concrete. Take, for example, the fable about the boy who cried wolf. It both gives listeners a chance to live in a world of what if, and still it offers readers a chance to see their own lives from a safe distance. To make our communications more effective, we need to shift our thinking from what information do I need to convey to what questions do I want my audience to ask. Chip Heath. If you wish to make your message concrete, you should avoid adding too many details. Instead, subtract all the unnecessary information. A good story or pitch gives the listeners all of the needed gist and none of the surface. In addition, a concrete story aids understanding and assimilation. The human brain is designed to keep those stories in our memory because they don't labor the mind to recreate a new narrative, but rather allow an existing one. Concrete ideas are simple. They don't use up too many language points. Instead, they use a general language that any listener, regardless of their race or background, will be able to understand without too much trouble. It might all sound too much of a task to translate a vast subject into a compact, concrete, layman version for your listeners. However, the author suggests that if you have trouble making your idea concrete, you should try going backward instead. Think of the customers, consumers, and users. What language will appeal to them the most? Once you identify your audience preferences, you can tailor your message to suit them. Key point 4. Concreteness is not all you need to sell your pitch. It also needs to be credible. Credibility is garnered in various ways or by various means. But first, it is essential to know why we find specific stories credible and others not. We associate truth with authority. If someone we trust or look up to tells a story, we immediately agree on their version of the tale without any question. So the first element of credibility is external authority to back up the story. Celebrities possess this power of authority and credibility about many subjects. These authorities and celebrities can't always be credible. Why? Because they lack closeness to the subject matter, and that's why the second element of credibility relies on anti-authorities. Individuals who, in one way or another, have had a personal experience with the subject, like the AIDS patient or a smoker who now has failing lungs. When they tell you that unprotected sex or smoking is detrimental to your health, you don't need to look any farther than them for proof. This method breeds credibility to the story without even having to present proof. But sometimes, these anti-authorities can be considered vague, and they can't precisely believe they can experience such. And that's where the inclusion of vivid details comes in. Credible stories are spirit-steering because it presents the readers or listeners with tangible facts and does so with valid details. An ad to stop people from driving at night might not get enough attention, but an awareness of the dangers lurking on the road will make them apprehensive of night travel and thus adhere to the directive. Vivid details aid proper understanding of a credible and concrete message, but they're just fancy words repeated without hard facts. These stats help put things in perspective. For example, if listeners were told that swimming in the ocean is less likely to lead to death than driving at night, people would argue that sharks kill surfers every day. While this would be false, it would catch on quickly, and that's why you need to add statistics. Likewise, telling listeners that a deer crossing the road is 300 times more likely to kill you than a shark in open water will suddenly make them shift ground and take your message thoughtfully. And that's the power of hard facts in gaining credibility. There's no better way to gain credibility for your product than to let people use free samples under various potential conditions. Key point 5. To make people care about your stories, you must capture their understanding. For your story to make people care, it needs to evoke a response on an emotional level. First, you need to appeal to their hearts and not their minds, since the mind is more analytical and will be less likely to give in to tearjerkers. Second, your message should not drag in any need for analysis. For example, if you want to solicit support for homeless children, don't start your message by stating the staggering number of children homeless daily, but instead make it about one child being homeless. The story's power, then, is twofold. It provides simulation, knowledge about how to react, and inspiration, motivation to act. Chip Heath. But not all listeners are so grand and selfless. In fact, humans usually aren't. Most people do stuff because it serves one person first, them. So if your message is to reach a group of people, then it must be something that will serve their interests first before anything else. For example, if you want to fund a school trip and parents to support you, you are better off offering a box of cookies for every donation than if you simply ask them to give money away. Remember, people are self-serving. And yes, this can be a bad thing, but you can use it to your advantage. You may be tempted to make everything on your message feed into this stereotype regarding the personal interest clause. Still, you can end up falling flat on your back because sometimes people have external values that they hold as dearer than their interests. Examples are the army, economic reforms, etc. So your message has to cater to these values well enough to urge them into action. Even when it is a significant discomfort to them, people will stand for a concept that they feel is wholesome and proper. This trend is an innate human trait. Therefore, it is essential to decide whether you want your message to draw from the well of the self-interest of concern for a more significant cause. Did you know? According to Hootsuite, 58% of people say they have become more interested in a brand or product after seeing it on social media stories. Key point 6. Another way to capture people's understanding is by connecting to their emotions. The place of emotions is essential in stirring response, which is why telling stories can get people to act. Stories are an entertaining and educative tool for disseminating meaningful messages because it is an opportunity to give the listeners a sense of wonder. It helps to instruct, inspire, and motivate them. A story simulates images and pathways in our minds. Therefore, it can travel into the world it suggests and exists therein. The critical factor of stories is that they push us to simulate. A problem is either solved if we can visualize it and work through it mentally. Stories aren't always easy to create, so instead of creating one, you can try to seek out one. A good story, or one with potential, will have either creativity, connection, challenging, or all three. The clever plot readies our minds to think and creates an eagerness to act. It causes us to think. The present good story will usher in freedom or drive to think, not just vaguely, but about concrete solutions. It gives us a chance to experience a mental breakthrough. However, the connection plot involves people who form relationships, and with this relationship transcend their limitations and achieve more than they would on their own. It causes us to yearn for a connection with the people around us in hopes of defeating a problem that's beyond us. With the challenging plot, the audience is met with a story that pits two opponents against each other, but one would be the underdog and the other a sure thing. The story highlights how the underdog, the protagonist, strives and defeats this insurmountable challenge and comes out on top. So it can be safe to say that a good story should challenge our minds to think, inspire us to seek connections, and motivate us to take on whatever challenge we currently face. The only drawback is making sure it isn't so well worded that it becomes too complex to be understood. Stories are a sticky tool for passing across an idea because they are concrete, credible, evoke emotions, and are, well, a story. Conclusion. Daily, we are faced with the burning question, how do I make people listen to my idea? And without the proper guidance, a lot of ideas will never be heard, mainly because they lack simplicity, unexpectedness, concreteness, credibility, emotion, and a compelling story. The goal is to tell your story and share your idea without the core intention of getting lost amidst the fanciful setup. Your idea is one tweak away from being sticky. One of the several methods of achieving effective communication, as discussed in summary, is aids. Some tools aid the dissemination of ideas such that it is more straightforward but retains its core. Thus, you can avoid burdening an idea with excess details. You should seek out the core of the idea. Another tool is giving them more facts than they can wrap their heads around. You'd expect that more knowledge would reduce curiosity, but it increases it, and this gives you a chance to expose them to new experiences and information. As long as there are new things left to learn, a curious mind will desire it. While basing your story's credibility on authority, anti-authority, giving it incredible detail and reliable statistics, and building around already established credible facts are all great for credibility. However, a final tool that is effective is letting the listener prove it for himself. Also, your message must possess such conciseness and directness that its message isn't misconstrued, a sense of history to help people relate to it, and a sense of wonder to cause them to keep asking, what's next? What's left? Try this. When next you have an idea you want to execute, ask yourself if it will pass the made-to-stick test. Here's a good example. Spend 10 to 15 seconds, no more, studying the letters below. J, F, K, F, B, I, N, A, T, O, U, P, S, N, A, S, A, I, R, S. After the period of studying the letters, try recalling as many letters as possible, in their order of appearance. Try to test on multiple occasions, and you're more likely to recall more letters afterwards. Now try again with the following string of letters: JFK, FBI, NATO, UPS, NASA, IRS. Go figure.